So the final season of Star Trek Picard is not that far off, and it's gonna give us fans something that we've wanted since the series was announced: the entire Next Generation crew back together again. In honor of that, how about we take a look at a super compressed version of the entire Star Trek timeline? Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Real quick, there are a couple of events that happened before the movies or TV series or any of that stuff that are worth at least mentioning. First up, we have the Eugenics Wars, which lasted from around 1992 to 1996. This occurred when a group of genetically enhanced individuals led by Khan Noonien Singh attempted to seize power on Earth. This didn't go too well for them, and as a result, they rocketed off into space like a bunch of cowards aboard the U.S.S. Botany Bay. Remember that. It'll come back up later.
Don't insult my intelligence.
Next up, we have World War III, which started in 2026, which is dangerously close to today, but moving on. This conflict left Earth completely decimated due to the heavy use of nuclear warheads. Don't worry though, as shortly after this, a man by the name of Zephyrin Cochrane developed and piloted the first warp-capable ship ever created by mankind. This drew the attention of a Vulcan ship, which in turn led to First Contact. Kind of an important moment and arguably one of the better Star Trek films. Now we jump forward to Star Trek Enterprise. Now admittedly, a lot of stuff did happen between Cochrane's first flight and the beginning of this series, but as I said, we're doing this super compressed, so if you want to see a longer version of this, why don't you give this video a like and maybe hit that subscribe button. Give this video enough love and I'll see what I can do. Anyways, Enterprise followed Captain Jonathan Archer and his crew aboard the NX-01 Enterprise, the first ship created by mankind capable of reaching speeds around warp factor 5. The series dealt with humanity's earliest interactions with species such as the Andorians, Klingons, and even some horrifying cybernetic organisms who appeared suspiciously close to the Borg.
This is Captain.
You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Yeah, I'm betting that you forgot that happened, or you're purposefully blocking it out.
I'm going to pretend that didn't happen.
Either way, the fact remains that the Borg did appear in Star Trek Enterprise. The series came to an end with a finale that saw the story jump forward several years to the founding of the United Federation of Planets in 2161, which also corresponded with the decommissioning of the NX-01. Next up is the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Discovery, which brought us some rather important moments in the overall timeline of the universe, such as the Battle of the Binary Stars, which led to full-on war between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. A war that didn't properly and completely end until the signing of the Khitomer Accords, which happened quite a bit later. Season 2 was all about time travel and a whole lot of weird artificial intelligence stuff. Really, the only thing about it that would later have universal impact is the fact that it ended with the Discovery seemingly disappearing. Moving on, I'm gonna squeeze Strange New Worlds and the original series kind of into one section here, mainly because they kind of overlap a bit. Anyways, these 2 shows chronicled the voyages of the U.S.S. Enterprise, NCC 1701. Under the command of both Captain Christopher Pike and later Captain James T. Kirk, a lot happened over the ship's 5-year mission to explore Strange New Worlds and all of that. But the one event that I really want to draw your attention to is what happened during the episode Space Seed, where the Enterprise encountered the SS Botany Bay and awoke Khan along with his genetically enhanced followers. As you would expect, they attempted to take over the ship, but Kirk and crew were able to put a stop to them and wound up stranding them on the planet Ceti Alpha 5. I can't imagine that ever coming up again. Oh, wait, it totally will, because now we're getting into the original series movies. There were 6 films with the original series crew. The first one dealt with some existential debates about free will and what it means to be alive. It's all pretty heady. The second film started a sort of trilogy of movies that all led into one another. In The Wrath of Khan, Khan escaped from Ceti Alpha 5. Oh no, who could have possibly seen that coming? He then stole an experimental terraforming machine called the Genesis device and nearly destroyed the Enterprise, before detonating it and biting the big one. Spock died in the process trying to save the ship, and his body was shot out into space, where it landed on a planet affected by the Genesis device's explosion. This led to the search for Spock, where the crew discovered that Spock had been resurrected by Genesis, and so they stole the Enterprise from Starfleet and returned to the planet to get him. In order to throw off some Klingons who were pursuing them, the crew actually activated the ship's auto-destruct sequence, which did exactly what you would think it would do. With the Enterprise destroyed, in the voyage home, the crew had to take a stolen Klingon bird of prey back to Earth, only to quickly discover that it was on the verge of being destroyed by a giant space tube who was looking for whales. They used science fiction wibbly-wobbly time stuff to go back in time to the 80s.
Wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
stole a pair of humpbacks, and returned to the future, where they were rewarded with a fancy new ship, the Enterprise, NCC 1701A. Then we have the Final Frontier, where the crew met Spock's brother and God, don't ask, and in the undiscovered country they stumbled upon a plot to try to sabotage peace talks between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. They put a stop to it, and this led to the signing of the Khitmar Accords. You know, that thing that I mentioned earlier. The next piece of media chronologically is the beginning of the first Next Generation movie, Generations. In Generations, we saw a few select members of the original crew aboard the ceremonial maiden voyage of the U.S.S. Enterprise B, which didn't exactly end well as it encountered a rift in space and Kirk was ultimately lost. Fast forward from the Enterprise B to the Enterprise D, C, to the beginning of Star Trek Next Generation. Next Gen took place roughly a century after the original series, and followed the adventures of Captain Jean-Luc Picard and his crew as they embarked on their own missions out into deep space. Notable events the series covered included the Battle of Wolf 359, where the Federation first came into conflict with the Borg proper. And also pretty much any time the enigmatic entity Q got involved with anything. Oh, and speaking of Borg, Picard got assimilated at one point, but he got better, so it's okay. Running somewhat concurrently with the later seasons of Next Gen were two other series. Deep Space Nine, which is basically just a worse Babylon 5, fight me, and Voyager, which answered the age-old question of what if lost in space, but with less insufferable children and a robot that looks better in a skin-tight jumpsuit.
Who's your mommy?
Then we get into the Next Gen movies, with Generations up first, which saw Picard teaming up with a not actually dead Kirk to stop a man named Soren from destroying an entire system. Oh, and also the Enterprise D got destroyed here, which is a little bit of a bummer for childhood John. Then came the best Star Trek movie, First Contact, which not only gave us a new Enterprise, the Enterprise E, but also saw said ship going back in time to stop the Borg from sabotaging Cochrane's first warp flight. It's awesome. Watch it. And if you've already seen it, watch it again. Next up was Insurrection, in which stuff happened. And then finally there was Nemesis, which saw a young clone of Picard attempt to destroy the Federation with the help of a whole lot of really not nice Romulans. It really wasn't great and actually caused the series to go on a little bit of a hiatus until J.J. Abrams rebooted the movies with his Kelvin timeline films, which I'm not going to talk about at all here because separate timeline stuff. I'm also not going to talk about Lower Decks, which would slot in roughly here-ish, mainly because of time restraints, but know that it is easily my favorite bit of modern post-TNG Trek. Now we come to Picard Seasons 1, 2, and the upcoming 3. In a nutshell, this series deals with Picard wrapping up some loose ends from his TNG days. Season 1 dealt with artificial life and Picard's relationship with Data, and Season 2 was all about Q doing more Q stuff. And to wrap up this timeline as it appears today, we have the far-off future of 3188, which is notable as the year in which the Discovery reappeared on the galactic stage, providing hope for a decimated Federation that was on the ropes after an event called the Burn caused all dilithium crystals, the stuff that powers warp drives, to become unstable and explode. All things considered, not the best time for humanity. And that is, so far, the furthest point into the future of Star Trek that we've seen. Now, I know that I definitely blazed through this timeline, and I'm sure a lot of my fellow Trek fans want to hear more. If that's the case, as I said, be sure to let us know down in the comments. Or you can tweet at me. I'd love to hear from you. Heck, you can even go ahead and reach out to me over there and try to tell me that Deep Space Nine is actually better than Babylon 5. You'd be wrong, but you can certainly try.